That's it, Gulshan.
Okay, so here we go. So we're going to make an assumption that you've done your prep, and the kind of prep we're talking about is similar to what I showed you this morning. And you've done your scan. So you've got your scan data, and what I've just done is I've clicked on this little purple icon on the taskbar just here, and it's opened up this first pane. Now, this is called Chairside DB. And the DB stands for database. And this was one of your questions. So Chairside DB, this is the first element, and then the other element of the software is called Chairside CAD, being computer-aided design. Now, what we're going to do here is load up one of the sample cases. So if I go up there to the screen and click on load, okay, we're going to use this one here called Chairside Case Sample, because it's a simple crown. So if I click on that, it gives me three options, and we're going to simply load it. And this will then give me some data so that I can share with you what you would do if you were inputting data. So let's say you've got a new patient, and you've done your scan from iTero. What that's going to do is that's going to populate the name of the patient here. Where there's this empty window on the left-hand side and it says type notes here, it will probably populate some data there, maybe shade and so on. What's really important is this in the middle, the tooth map, okay?
Yeah.
Particular case, can you see the upper left 5, purple in color, and the legend in the middle tells us that that's selected as an anatomic crown. In the opposing quadrant, so it suggests that here, whoever's done the scan data has only scanned upper left quadrant and a lower left quadrant, nothing more than that, okay? Because we're just looking at quadrant data here. So if we click on or hover over this, it shows us that the full anatomic crown, the material chosen is glass ceramic, there's no implant to speak of, and there's no pre-op model, okay? In the lower, these are just listed as antagonist teeth. So are you with me so far?
Yeah, could I just ask a question, Gulshan? Given that it's obvious the teeth there, sometimes I looked at the video you said, and it identified one antagonist tooth. Is that simply because that's the opposing tooth?
Yeah, I mean, whether you put in the whole arch that you've scanned or whether you just click on one, the software just needs to know, is there antagonist data to come in? So for instance, if you really wanted to populate all of the data, you could click on this 6 and say, hey, there's an adjacent tooth there, and click on OK.
Yeah.
When I came and taught you guys, I taught you guys to put in all of the data to try and get you into good habits, because it gets you into practicing the fact that, look, when you click on any tooth, I know I was talking about indications of what you can use the software for. This is the primary indications right here, okay? As soon as you click on more, now it's just switched on all the laboratory indications as well. Bite splints, your reduced pontics, your reduced crowns, your copings. So where I said to you this morning, I can simplify it, well, just click on less and literally just have this available and nothing more, and then you won't get into trouble. So are you with me so far in terms of how you pick the type of restoration?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to label that 4 as a antagonist. So here we go. We've got the 5, which is the crown. You've got adjacent neighbors, which are healthy teeth, and you've got antagonists. Now, let's go into a bit more detail now. We're going to click on the 5, and you can see on the left-hand side, anatomic crown has already been ticked. Okay. In the middle is where you choose your material options. Now, what's really important for you guys, you have a 4-axis milling machine, and the software is tied to that specific milling machine. So here, it will probably say something like VHF Z4, which is the type of machine, okay?
Sure.
It's a 4-axis machine. Yeah. Now, so that does not need to be changed, but if ever you see that someone switched it to a 5-axis, John, please make sure it's switched back to the correct one.
Gotcha.
That's why I'm telling you what that drop-down is. Next thing, going down further, this is also important because this is where it gives you the parameters. So there are preset parameters for these different materials. Now, mostly you guys are going to be doing either feldspar, okay, or glass ceramic or a hybrid. Because they don't have a furnace, you can't access lithium disilicate.
Sure.
You can certainly do composite if you wanted to, and if you wanted to do a provisional restoration, you'd choose PMMA. Now here, glass ceramic was already chosen, so I'm going to leave it on that. And that's something like Empress. Now we go over to the far right-hand screen. What we've done is we've brought in data. We've ensured that Exocad knows what data to expect. Now we're concentrating on, let's call it the working tooth. We've talked about the type of restoration here. We've talked about the material choice here. And now we get into the parameters, okay? The first thing right at the top is whether or not you've got a pre-op model. Now that's for situations where you are scanning the patient's tooth before you do the prep because you want to copy some or all of the anatomy. You know, those kind of situations. Let's say you want to change a gold crown to a ceramic crown, you know, that kind of thing. Or let's say you've got a tooth which has a clasp on it for a chrome denture because you don't want to change that, otherwise the chrome won't fit. So if you have scanned a pre-op model, this is where you tell the software. You go into that drop down, click yes, and it will expect that extra level of data. If you haven't, then you leave it at no. Right, the next thing is the minimal thickness. Now, every material here has had a kind of average minimum thickness put in by the manufacturer. So for glass ceramic it's 0.8. If we switch to feldspar, it's the same. Let's see, composite is that as well. You can see that with PMMA, it just went down to 0.5 and so on. Now, here, you can change this to whatever you like, okay? But obviously, to start with, I would say keep it as close to possible to 1 millimeter, okay?
Why would I change it, Gulshan? If it's a manufacturer...
Well, I'll tell you why. You'll get into... Right, you know, this morning when we were going through my clinical cases, and you were talking about how some of your VTs in the past had said to you, look, I can't gain this much clearance and that, and so on. So the reason that minimum thickness value is in there, it's a parameter, and when you get into the design, it's going to be giving you those warnings, okay? To basically ensure that you don't create a restoration that's likely to fail, okay? So you can start changing that parameter when you get comfortable with CAD/CAM or when you get comfortable with the materials and you start pushing the envelope. So the kind of cases that I showed you today, deep subgingival kind of cases are where I'm going to 0.3, 0.4 mil in particular areas which are, let's say, out of occlusion. The other reason this is really important is initially today I'm going to show you the software in wizard mode. That's basically the easy settings, right, where the software helps you. Now, in helping you, what it will do is, if you mess up the design such that you encroach on the minimum thickness, it will revert back to the parameter and it will add material back on. So, for instance, Yogi was asking me the other day, why is it that I do a design and then it changes it? Well, the chances are that he's ignoring the warnings that are popping up on the screen. Okay? So if you ignore the warnings, it will pop it back up to your parameters so that you don't create something that will either fail in milling or fail as soon as you fit it. Right. So the next thing here that you can adjust easily is the gap width of cement. And you remember when I was with you guys, I was saying to Jag that, you know, with some people, they prefer a tighter fit, some looser fit. It really depends on your comfort zone, whether you're fitting with a luting cement or a heated restorative composite. Do you see what I mean? You have leeway there, and it's all about passivity of fit, really. So can you see how this is highlighted pink? That's a warning that someone's changed it from the default, okay? So if we take it up to, I don't know where it might have been down here somewhere. But basically, if it hasn't been changed from default, it will be like a minimal thickness. Watch what happens here. As soon as I change the minimal thickness, it goes pink. That means somebody changed it today. Now, if one of your colleagues has changed it in the past, when you then open this up, this will be bright yellow. Okay, fluorescent yellow, to warn you that something has been changed from the default. Okay, so if I try and change that back to 0.8, it takes the color away because it's in the safe zone. Now, I don't know where this minimum thickness of gap of cement is meant to be for this, and really it doesn't matter, but it's something that you play with once you've milled a few restorations and you decide how tight or loose you want it to be. Right, I'm going to quickly show you one more thing. If I click on this button here where it says Advanced Parameters, a whole load of parameters open up, but we're not going to dwell on that just now. We can come back to it, okay? One final thing on this screen is the shade. If you put in the shade, when you're showing the patient the design, let's say that they're awake and not under sedation, it just gives the software an idea of what shade to show up on the screen. So let's just put in an A3 there. It's really important that you hit OK, and now that has put in our parameters. Okay, can you note now that when I hover over it, the material shade has appeared as A3? Final thing on this screen right down here, people often miss this, is scan mode. In your case, scan mode is always going to be digital impression scan. There are other things here. So let's say for whatever reason you've had your laboratory scan a stone model for you and send you the data, then you can put that in. But otherwise, if it's coming straight off of iTero, it's going to always stay on digital impression scan. Okay. So what we've done is brought in the data. We've told it what data to expect, what type of restoration, what material and what position, and now we're going to click on save. As soon as I click on save, these options just lit up here. So the only one that interests us is design. Now the minute I click on design, it's going to go ahead and open the other element of the software, which is chairside CAD. And this is where it's going to ask you for the data if it's not there already, and you start with the design process. So can you see this new screen that's opened up? I'm going to maximize that. And what you see on the screen here is initially you're going to see the master, let's say the master arch, the working arch, so the upper one. And if you look on the top left-hand side, the antagonist is there as well. Can you see where it says show hide up here in the top left? So if I switch on antagonist and then increase this slider, there's the antagonist data. Now the way I'm moving this around on the screen is I'm holding my right mouse button and then moving my mouse around. Okay, so that's to rotate. If I wanted to move the whole lot bodily around the screen, I hold both left and right mouse buttons and I can do this. Okay, I'm going to tell you a couple of keyboard shortcuts. So the shortcut to get rid of the antagonist is the A button, A for antagonist. And if you want to get rid of the scan data, you press S. If I press S, the scan data goes. If I press A, the antagonist comes and goes, okay? Right, now, in order, we talked earlier about the use of loops, okay? And getting the prep right. No surprise that the prep here is almost exactly the same as the kind of preps that I was showing you on my real life cases. This is also real life data. So what I've just done here is I've used the scroll wheel on my mouse, okay, to go ahead and zoom in, okay? So if I zoom in and zoom out, it just makes it easier to see my data, okay? What it's asking us now on the left-hand side is basically to place our margin. Now there are two different ways to place our margin. There's detect, which is the left tab, and there's correct draw, which is on the right tab. Now, if we use detect, it means the software is going to do it for you. Now, let's have a look at this prep. It's pretty much ISO gingival, and retraction cord is clearly in there. You can see the trough all the way around. Can you see that?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Good. Now, can you see there's this little green dot on the screen? Yeah? And in the top right-hand side, can you see there's a profile view? There's a little window, and as I move around, right, it's basically giving me a profile, a cut profile view of the prep. So as I hover around, if I move off of that, look, it can show you that I'm going into that trough, and then I come back up, I'm on the gingiva. Do you see what I mean?
Gotcha.
Now, for me personally, I tend not to use that. I know in the lab they do use that, but when you are highlighting your own prep, then you should know where to find it. With a lab technician, they're finding a prep that someone else has done. So this kind of thing tends to be useful because they're seeing it as a technician would see on a stone model. See what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, now, because we're on detect mode, I'm going to place a single click somewhere on this margin and watch what happened. I literally clicked once and it found the entire margin itself. Did you see that?
I did.
Shall I show you again? I'm going to press clear on here and I'm going to show you one more time. Literally a single click there and it found the whole margin. This is why I was nagging you about the prep this morning, because if you can prep it like this, then the software comes into its own. If you need to edit that for whatever reason, okay, you can then switch over to the other tab, correct draw, and watch what happened. The line went green, and now you've got these little points all the way around. They're called control points. And this is where, if you want to modify it and edit it, you can drag them and move them, okay? You can, you can move them, you can add to them. So if I wanted to add a point here, just click on it and then use that as a point to drag it from, okay? Let's say if I wanted to do the whole thing manually and I clear that line, okay? Then this is how you do it. So for a real life prep, again, you get your little point and you start drawing around, okay? You were asking me, one of your questions was, what is magnetic line drawing? So I'm going to show you, okay? So at the moment I'm doing completely manually, but it is helping me, and you've got the window in the top corner. Now if I go ahead and click magnetic line drawing, watch what it does. And now you can't tell, but what this is doing is it's kind of sticking to the prep, right?
Yes.
It's trying to guide me around.
I see that,
so
yeah.
I'm able now to take longer steps.
Got
Basically, it's sticking to where it thinks the margin is all the way around. Me personally, I don't like that because it gives you this kind of wavy line. Clear that and then do it without that on, okay? I feel that I can do it faster, right? And in doing it faster, even if I make a few mistakes, so I'm going to purposely make a few mistakes.
Yeah.
I can take really big jumps, because then what I can do is I can zoom in and then I can fix it like this, right? For me, that's quicker. Remember I said to you guys, chairside CAD is all about speed. If you prep it right, then you can do this real quickly. You can use auto and what have you. And it's about getting out of each stage as quick as you can. Now look here, see how it's dropped off the edge of the line here?
Yes.
We can just bring it up like so. Alright, are you happy with that margin that I've put in there? Because there's not a lot more to do. Alright? Now, things to note here, this patient has got amalgams in both of the adjacent teeth, and look how rough and lumpy they are.
Yes.
Do you remember when I came to see you guys, I said to you that these are the kind of things that you look at when you're doing chairside CAD, because they're going to get in your way. You're going to see in a minute where you've got lumpy, bumpy adjacent teeth, you're going to have lumpy, bumpy contacts,
Sure.
right? So if you do yourself a favor, we talked about loops earlier, and you're using a magnification and you do the patient a favor and you smooth all of these with a finishing burr, it just makes your scan cleaner, your contacts cleaner. Do you know what I mean? So if you're happy with that, I'm going to hit on next here, okay?
Yep.
So we're into design software, and all it's asked us to do so far is give us the margin line. Now, this next thing is something that Yogi gets wrong all of the time. The red there is highlighting physical undercut on your prep. Now, the question here on the left-hand panel is, what is your insertion direction, John Wilmot, right? So basically, if you said that's my insertion direction, it's just not going to work because you've got a massive undercut, okay?
Sure.
This is why I just introduced the lumpy bumpy stuff, because the yellow on the adjacent teeth is digital undercut. That means if you choose that path of insertion, these are the bits and pieces that might get in your way.
Mm-hmm.
The red is physical undercut on the tooth. Now, you need to make a compromise between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I'm doing is I'm using my right mouse button to position it in such a way that I think, yeah, I can compromise with regards to that undercut here and there, and use that as my insertion direction. So look, I'm changing it by just very careful movements, okay?
Sure.
Do you accept that as a path of insertion? What do you think?
Well, the mesial undercut, is that going to be an
it's
issue?
there. So look, if we negate that, okay, now we have a little bit on each side.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I wanted you to see. So now instead of all of the undercut on the mesial, we've got a little bit mesial and a little bit distal.
Mm-hmm.
You see that?
Yep.
But here's the next problem. Now look at what's happened with the 4. The distal of the 4
Oh, yeah.
is now getting in the way. So that means that whilst you've negated this undercut, it means that you're going to potentially have a black triangle here or a very thin bit of porcelain. Can
Yes.
you see that?
Got it.
Now, instead of doing that, if you did this, right, yes, we've now got more undercut here, which will be filled with cement, but the chances are you're now going to have an equal thickness of porcelain either side. Now can you see why on the previous screen I highlighted the fact that there's lumpy bumpy areas on the adjacent teeth?
Sure.
So when you become the technician and you're doing the design and the placement, this is where it's important to look at adjacent teeth and be spatially aware. Does it make sense?
It does.
Right. So now can you see why I left that mesial undercut there? Because I was looking at all of the adjacent data. I was looking at the 6, the 4, the red, the yellow, everything together.
Yeah.
Because here, it's not our prep, and we're having to make a bigger compromise. What I'm trying to teach you is that if you look at this stuff clinically in the mouth, before you go ahead and scan, then you don't need to make the compromise in the digital part. Do you see what I mean?
Surely.
Right. So once you've picked whatever you feel is the right insertion axis, here's what people do wrong. They forget to press this purple button here. See where it says set current view as insertion axis? That has to be pushed, then you press next. Come back to it in Expert. So what we've done so far, put the data in, highlighted the margin, set up the insertion axis. We skipped over copy tooth because we don't have the contralateral tooth here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going in straight into model tooth placement. So here is where you choose from your libraries, okay? Lots and lots of libraries there. We're going to just use generic for today, okay? But if you want to start using other shapes, they are available right there within the software. So you can see some are rounded, some are longer, some are squarer, and so on. So once you want to start switching to other shapes, you're welcome to do so. Personally, for the last 2 years, I've been using generic, and the reason is that I use generic to start with, and then I tailor it for the restoration.
Sure.
So to be honest, none of them end up being a generic tooth. All of them are customized. Okay?
Fine.
So what I'm doing here is I'm moving the model around so that you can appreciate where it's put that tooth model at the moment, okay?
Yes.
It's shifted it a little bit to the buccal. And what I'm going to do is this time I'm going to use the left mouse button, hold it down, and I'm going to drag and move it in a buccopalatal direction. Did you see what I did there?
I saw that, yeah.
Right? Now, there's this kind of pink halo here. And remember we were talking about parameters. If you look up here on the legend, okay, pink is minimum thickness, okay?
Yep.
If I ramp that up, okay, it shows it up as bright red. If I bring it down, it shows it more like pink. Anyway, it's the warning sign, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The next thing that's a warning sign, you see the blue and the turquoise there?
Yep.
If we click on this legend up here, that's telling us that those areas are contacting the opposing tooth. Now, because we're milling in-house, we are concerned about proximity. That's more data than just the contact, okay? Watch. As soon as I switch on proximity, okay, you see a gradient of color, mesially, distally, and occlusally, okay? Pink, I can tell you, is going to be heavy contact. Orange is pretty much where you want it to be. And blue turquoise is, as it shows up here in the legend, it's further away. Okay?
Gulshan, the show proximity, that was simply click on that down and select from the list. Gotcha.
You have 3 different options, John. You have intersections. So intersections, now if I put in the antagonist, is literally where it's intersecting through the opposing or adjacent tooth, okay?
Yep.
If I just show you contacts, right? Contacts is, yes, I'm touching. But if I show you proximity, it's a combination of all of that data.
Right.
So pink is where it's heavy in the contact. Orange is where it's, close, like let's say iso contact, let's say, touching.
Yep.
Yellow and green is, it's approaching, and blue and turquoise, it's further away. Now I can show you that graphically as well, just by putting in the antagonist, right? You can see how much space there is between those 2 teeth, and it's still just turquoise, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and we're going to look and concentrate on that in the next window. But this is just to actually take it from a library tooth to one that is more in keeping with what we're trying to create. So if you look on the left here, it tells you there's 3 instructions. It tells you that the left mouse button, if I hold it and drag it around, will move it around, yes?
Yep.
The next thing it tells you is that the control, okay, so if I hold the control button on the keyboard, and then use my left mouse button, it allows me to rotate it in all axes.
Sure.
Can you see that? And then the third option that it gives you there is the shift, the shift button. Okay, if I hold that and use my left mouse button, it allows me to scale it buccolingually and mesiodistally.
Yep.
And that's what I've done. Can you see that now it's the original tooth, but it's been scaled to be larger and it's been rotated.
Got it.
Now what I'm going to do is use those tools as quick as possible. This has to be no more than 3 or 4 minutes, okay, doing this.
Sure.
And all you're doing is you're taking what it's given you and you're placing it in a better position, okay? So you can bring in your antagonist data, look at it from all different angles and think, yeah, you know, what's this patient going to like? You know, we can tuck it in there, we can bring it down. Yeah? Okay. Now, tell me, what does all of this pink mean now?
That's contacts?
Heavy or light?
Quite heavy.
Good man. It's so heavy that the patient wouldn't be able to close. Now, let me show it to you graphically. This is why I said looking through instructions is no good. I can literally show it to you. Look. See?
Yes.
The pink is fully intercepting through the antagonist. Understand?
Yep.
Right. So, if we're on the same page now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the next button, and you have to watch really carefully because this is a brand new computer. It's pretty fast, and it's going to do the next stage pretty quickly, okay? I'm going to bring in the antagonist data and show you from the side angle like this. Watch. Right. So, can you see on the left-hand side it says auto-articulator?
Yes.
So what it started doing completely automatically is adapting what I designed to the prep margin that we placed, okay? Did protrusions, lateral excursions, and all of those things for us, and now look what we have. You see?
I didn't realize at this stage it adapted the margins as well.
Yeah, and this is where, so the first thing that it asked us to do was place our margin. The second thing was insertion direction. The third thing is choose from a library and help it adapt. And the fourth thing, it pretty much does by itself. Now, if I turn off these colors, so the button on the far right where it says show distances, if I turn that off, look at what it's done. It's put in all my wear facets for me. It's taken down the high spots, you know. All that's left to do is tweak and send it to mill. So can you see how it's adapted it? And all of that was automatic. And what I'm suggesting you do, because you didn't use CEREC before and because I need you to get a few restorations under your belt, is use auto for as much as possible. And when you get into trouble, because you will, then that's where I'm around to help, okay?
Okay.
Right. So can you see that we've got a restoration that pretty much fits our parameters right now? If we turn on our colors, I can tell you that that will fit. It probably needs some adjustment. Now, what I'm going to do is press the S button to get rid of the adjacent teeth. And what we have now is just the proposed crown, yes?
Yes.
Now, I'm going to turn off the colors, and I'm going to take you through a process that I go through myself with all of my cases to make it quick and easy and finish this so it's ready to mill. So watch carefully. First thing, switch off the colors. As soon as you do that, you can see, because the adjacent teeth weren't properly adjusted, we have these flat facets here and lumpy, bumpy areas, yes?
Sure.
This is why we talked about it earlier. We're going to go to this panel here, which is called Freeforming, okay? And it's got 4 tabs to it. The first thing is Free. The second one is Anatomic. Third one is Adapt. And the fourth one you are not to use. It's for attachments, okay? You come back to that once you've done 50, 60 of these, okay? So we're going to go to Free. And in Free, the first tool that I use is Smooth Flatten. Now, what that means is that button has got 2 options. The initial option is to smooth. If while you're on that option you hold the Shift button, it does the opposite. It does flatten. Likewise here, if I'm on this tool, it's adding ceramic. If I hold the Shift button while I'm on that tool, it will remove ceramic. So let me show you. With this tool, as soon as I hover over the crown, it's green. If I hold down the Shift button, okay, it will go red. Sorry, it should do, but it's a little bit slow. It's also a very, very high strength at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to bring down the strength, and I'm going to bring down the size, and I'm also going to undo those changes, okay? Right, so. Now, you may have noticed there that I undid what I just did, and then if I undo one further one, what it does is, it takes it back to the unadulterated crown. Yeah, the one before auto-articulation. So let me prove that to you. There's all the high points. So there is a way to go back to the unadulterated one and do it all manually. Now, I don't tell that to everybody, but it's there, okay? So this is once it's been adjusted, and what we're going to do is take that and tweak it further. So I use Smooth, and I go all around like this on a relatively low strength, small brush size, what I'm doing first, John, is I'm getting rid of all the lumpy bumpiness, because I'm a cosmetic practitioner. I want things to look nice and feel nice, okay? And then we deal with function afterwards. So all of this I'm doing with the mouse. I'm holding down the left mouse button and I'm just running around. I'm not staying still at all, otherwise you'll get flat spots. And literally, you can see I'm moving around. I'm holding down the button. Can you see how that smooths the restoration? Yes.
So when you're doing that, Gulshan, when you're doing that in the interstitial areas, is there a risk of taking off so much that you'll leave a gap?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, yes. But remember, we're a cosmetic practitioner for a minute or two, just making things look nice, okay? Okay, once you've made it look nice, I'm going to show you how you fix the other things. So remember, I made that nasty comment that, look, if this is for an NHS patient and you want to mill it and get them out quickly, I said, do this.
Sure. Flatten
every damn thing, okay? If they're not, then you can certainly undo that, and you can even put in more fissures, okay?
Yeah.
So right now, I've made it kind of a smooth blob. If we bring in the antagonist data, it gives an idea to look at the anatomy of the adjacent teeth, okay? And now we can switch our colors back on, and you can see actually what we've ended up here with is some heavy contacts.
Sure.
So we've got some pink areas. Now the easiest way to remove that is to go to add remove, have a small brush size, okay? If I hover over here, this is green, it's going to add. If I press the shift button, it goes red, and a couple of little light clicks. Can you hear my mouse? Just a few little light clicks, and that's gone, okay?
Gotcha.
Likewise on this side, couple of clicks.
Gotcha.
Now, if I wanted, for whatever reason, to add some material, I let go of the shift button, and let me show you from an angle. Watch what this does. I'm just holding the button. Can you see it's rising up? And there comes the contact. So this is add remove, and that's how that works. If you wanted to smooth it further, you could do so like this, okay? Often it's easier to see the effect of smooth with the color switched off.
Sure.
Okay? The opposite of smooth is flattened. So if I hold down the shift button, look what it did. Complete flat spot. Okay? If you overdo any of these, you've got a wonderful tool here called undo. Just literally hit that. Okay?
Yep.
So that's those 4 tools all together. Now,
Gulshan, just before you go on, Gulshan, how did you switch the colors on and off?
This button on the right hand side, John,
where it says
show distances. Okay, if I hit that, it switches those on and off.
Got you.
Do you remember where we chose the color of the tooth and we gave it an A3?
I do.
Here's where we show the patient this button here that says True Smile. You do that, you get the real color of the tooth, okay?
Okay.
If I put that into context with the adjacent teeth, and if you imagine if you have a full color scan, and you see the patient's got a nasty black amalgam here, an amalgam here, and you're about to fit this is where, as long as your patient's wide awake, they get to see it and say, Dr. Wilmot, I can't stand the look of those other teeth. What can you do for me there?
Yes.
So this is you selling more dentistry just using technology, okay? So that's why they've got the True Smile option, because it literally helps you in educating the patient, but also let me show you what else it does. Watch this. We were using a paintbrush tool. This one is called the point of knife tool. So if I switch to that, and watch what happens, we have a point there now instead of a big round area. If we go to add remove, okay, and I press the shift button, that will go red, okay, I can literally draw a fissure in here.
Oh.
And because we've got True Smile, it will colour in that fissure. Now, some of my patients hate that, and they say, oh, no, I don't want brown areas in my teeth. And I say, no, don't worry. All it's going to do is highlight where they are. It helps me in designing it. Do you see what I mean? And do you not think that you could get to playing with this? If you can do video editing, imagine, look at what you could do with this. This is taking me seconds to do. This would take at least minutes for a lab technician to do. Now, if I turn off True Smile, look at that in monochrome. And I promise you, your milling machine can produce that, and you can fit that. Are you with me so far?
No, absolutely.
So we're just going to go through another 2 tabs here, and then we're almost done, okay? The first one is anatomy, okay? So within anatomy, what it means is instead of using those manual tools to adjust the proposed restoration, cusps will obviously let you just do this. Look, lift and remove your cusps, okay? On either side. Yes, you can stretch them anyway. So I've got my left mouse button, and I'm pressing and moving those, okay? Tooth parts is areas of the tooth. So let's say this whole palatal wall, like so. we could move the buccal wall, basically any area. No particular anatomical area, but a whole part of it. Can you see? So like so. Entire tooth, well, it does what it says on the tin. You know, that's crazy. It's very rare for us to ever have to use that, so I'm going to undo that one. And then ridge is obviously the marginal ridges, okay? So it will allow you to do things like this and lift up marginal ridges.
And I noticed whilst you were doing that, it was firmly clamped to the margins.
That's right. That does not change.
No.
Okay, that was adapted earlier. We're going to go through what that silver collar is towards the end. But yes, it will not change the marginal fit. What you're doing is, let's say you're changing the polished surface and not the quality of fit, okay?
Sure.
Now, I purposely showed you all of that with the color switched off, because this is what happens. If you make changes without paying attention to what it's doing to the contacts, okay, you will run into trouble and you will have a truckload of adjustment to do later on, okay?
Right.
So it's really important that when you do this, before you go to the final stages, you always check your contacts, right? Not just with your antagonist, but with your adjacent teeth as well. So I've purposely left these areas high because I want to use the next bit to demonstrate something for you. So really heavy contact there and there and there, okay? We're now going to switch to adapt. There are two types. Right, so the first adaptation is the occlusal adaptation. And again, we have a parameter here, okay? And it says that the desired distance, if it's a negative number, you're going to have intersection. That means it will be heavy in the contact.
Sure.
And that means if it's a positive number, as it is now, you're going to leave free space. Well, if you want iso contact, you put that to 0. If you hit that 0 and you press this button here which says cut intersections, okay, again, we're only affecting the occlusal. Watch what happens. Okay, the heavy contacts are gone now. If we turn off the colors, you've got those little wear facets there now, which may or may not work for you and your patient. Likewise, if I just show you the proximal surfaces there and we switch to aproximal, okay, what it's done is it's found that there are adjacent teeth and it's highlighting those, okay? And again, you have parameters. You have a parameter for the emergence profile and you have a parameter for the level of contact. If you leave it as 0, it's going to be touching. Like it says, if you leave it as a negative number, it will be an intersection, i.e. it will be heavy contact that you may want to then polish. And if you leave it as a positive number, it will be an open contact. So if we leave this at 0, watch what happens. We click on cut intersections.
Got you.
To show you what's happened, you probably saw it change.
Yeah.
If we switch back to occlusal, look at that.
Yeah.
Heavy contacts, gone. Okay, however, look what happens.
Yeah.
We've got our lumpy bumpiness now back because no one adjusted the amalgams. You see how it all comes back to the start, and at the start was the prep.
Sure.
And the prep of the tooth was good, but no one looked at the adjacent teeth. So this is why I teach in a certain order, is that if you get things right at the start, the design becomes very, very easy, okay? So now, because we've got this lumpy bumpiness, we've got to go back to free, go back to smooth, and paintbrush, and we get the opportunity just to tidy these things up a little bit, because if you leave it like that, when they try and floss there, it's going to snag and so on, and then they come back asking for a refund, and everyone's unhappy. So I just quickly smooth those over. Let's look at those contacts again. Yes, we're a bit heavy, so I'm going to go to add remove. Just a few clicks here. Get rid of those. Maybe remove these as well. Just leave it in orange so that there's less adjustment to do. And this is not bad at all here. Okay, if we turn everything off and make it all look nice, what do you think of that restoration?
That's pretty realistic.
And I'm sure you've been timing me. How long have I been so far?
39 minutes.
Okay, so we've been chatting quite a bit, but 39 minutes and we are pretty much ready to mill this. What I would say here is that I personally would add some support there, okay, like so. So I'm just on add remove and just bulking it out there. And then when we put in our scan data, we see how that kind of fits in. Yes, we are super gingival there, but you know, that's pretty much ready to cut, okay? Right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to hit next, and it's literally going to take it to the final stage. Coming to the final stages, that is a restoration in the background that's ready to mill. Now, you remember earlier we chose the material to be a glass ceramic, so it's given me a whole list of glass ceramics here. These are blocks, and they're all different sizes. So I-10 is a 10 millimeter block, that's a 12 millimeter
I
block
see.
there. If I click on one of those blocks, and it also gave me the shade, what it does is it proposes the block over the restoration, okay? And this thing sticking out of the side is the sprue. You understand what I mean by
I
a
do,
sprue,
yes,
yeah?
I do.
Okay. Now, the red is obviously a warning. It means that, you know what, that's not big enough for that, that block is not big enough. So
Yes.
you can grab the block and move it around, right? But actually, the whole block is just not going to work. We need to go back here, and we need to switch it up to a 14 millimeter block, okay?
Yeah.
So let's go here. So glass ceramic, LT's low translucency, C14, A3, there you go. Physically bigger block. And what it's doing there is it's giving us a sprue. Now, Shivani had a problem the other day. She did an inlay. She was trying to put the sprue somewhere where there wasn't ceramic, so it wouldn't let her mill it. Right? If you turn it around that way and drag it this way, watch what happens. Sprue goes to the other side. Now, what I personally do, John, is I always sprue restorations such that they come straight out of the mill, they get etched and silinated straight in the mouth. Cut off the sprue in the mouth. Yeah, so I always try and have it such that the sprue is either buccal or palatal, okay?
Sure.
So you can move this around. The other thing you can do is, if it's in a big block like this and it's a premolar, the closer you put it to the edge, the faster it's going to mill it, okay?
Sure.
If you go and stick it in there, it's got to cut through all of this out of it before it gets to doing the crown.
Yeah.
So I would say put it there. Now, some of the materials that you'll have available are polychromatic, okay, so multicolored, and you'll literally see the lines in these restorations. Let's see if we can do that. So I've gone back to the block, and if I go here to any material, okay, like so, it's going to give me a huge list, okay? So loads of different materials, all in various different orders. Let's see if we can choose something polychromatic. Let's see if we go to, let's see, feldspar, we might have it there, Vita Mark II, there. See this one, Trilux Forte? That is a polychromatic block, okay? Now, it's basically given me a warning saying that initially I chose glass ceramic, now I've switched to feldspar. Are you really wanting to change your mind? I'm going to say yes. Watch. Different colours in that block.
And I saw in the quick guide that you can accentuate those colours.
Of course you can. Look, you can move it up and down.
Yeah.
So what you've just done is you've now put more of that tooth in the dark section. If I did that, more of it's in the light section. You see? This is where you really get into your own, where you're creating something so customized that, to be honest, a lab would not be able to do 4 colours in the crown like that. So are you with me so far? Still got a sprue. We've now got a polychromatic material there. Final things to choose here. Look, see that clock?
Yep.
You can choose the speed of cutting, okay? Mostly if it's chair side, you're going to go fast. If you go high quality, the only thing that changes here is the level of detail in the occlusal surface. The fit will always be absolutely robust, let's say, accurate, okay? Look here, you can change the layer visibility, so you can change the contrast. Can you see that now? You can actually see the stripes, yeah? I didn't have time to show everyone else this, so you've now got more information than the others, okay? So once you've got to there, you click on next, it's now going to say, okay, the blank type is different, and we're going to say, no, ignore that, proceed anyway, and it's now looking for the milling machine. And as you can see, that's a picture of the mill that you guys have got, okay? The final thing that you've got to do there is you put in some details there, whether it's your name or the actual lot number. As soon as you hit next, it will then send it to the milling machine. That was a very, very quick run through of everything that you do from start to finish to get the thing ready to mill. Your questions, okay? So we're going to go through. Your first thing, it says design bottoms, okay? So the easiest way for me to show you that is this. Watch on this bar here where it says expert, okay?
Yeah.
We're now going to switch from wizard mode to expert mode.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so I'm now in expert mode. It's giving me all kinds of warnings. I'm going to ignore those. Now, if you look very carefully, what's happened is down at the bottom, there's this bar, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, because we've already completed the restoration, I have to delete that restoration, okay? So I have to go back a stage, hold on, to one where I can still modify it. So I need to go back to before I've merged it, okay? Now if I switch to expert, watch what happens. Now you'll recognize these steps. These are the steps we went through, okay?
Yes.
So the first thing we did was we put in our margin line. Then we had insertion direction, bottoms, as I said to you, it skipped. Copy tooth, we skipped. We then loaded from the generic library, we used freeform, and we did merge, okay? This is where I get the opportunity to show you what all of these things do. Now, if I switch the crown back on, up here, designed parts,
Yeah.
yeah, you can change its translucency so that you can look at where the prep is underneath, okay? And let's go through your questions now. So the first thing was
Just
bottoms,
where
okay?
did you change the translucency?
Up here, John, on the top left, you have a slider.
Oh, I've
on
got it.
each of
Yeah,
these,
yeah,
yeah?
yeah. I remember.
Likewise, I can switch on minimum thickness and ramp that up as well. And we haven't encroached on minimum thickness. And likewise, you can switch on and off your preparation, all of the different things, and you can change the slider value so that you can see what you need to see personally, okay? So the whole point of Exocad is that it's entirely personal to the individual person and how they want to have the data on their screen, okay? It's not prescribed. Okay, let's go to bottoms. If I click on there, it's going to give us parameters, and parameters is the right word because we're now talking about what we had here.
Yes.
Remember I said to you earlier today about these parameters, and I said I'll come back to them. Well, this is where we go back to them. So all of these parameters there, have a quick scan down that, okay? They are right here in the border. Look at these, you see?
Yes.
So all of those are what I just showed you, okay? I'm going to turn off the antagonist. We're going to look at that. What do you think that arrow is right there?
That's line of insertion.
Absolutely, good. So you were listening, right? See that green area there, that angled green area?
Yes.
Right, remember I said to you earlier, I said I'll show you what that grey margin is. That grey margin is now highlighted for you, bright green, okay? It's basically the untouchable part of the restoration. So where we were doing all of those design changes, okay, what it won't let you change is the quality of fit. And the quality of fit is, it has locked parameters, and this is where they are. So the gap we talked about, well, that gap there, see that 0.54?
Sure.
Well, there it is, 0.54. You see in bright yellow?
Yep.
So everything comes from the parameters page. Now, if I switch off the preparation and you look at, hold on, the light green there is this light green here. It means there's no gap at all. Really tight, precise fit.
Yep.
The gold part on the chimney of the prep, well, that's this bit, and it's got a gap of 0.054. Now, you can change that. Watch what happens. If I slide this up, watch the screen. Can you see how it's growing?
Sure.
So now you're going to get a nice baggy fit there, you see?
Yeah.
And if you said, like I said to you earlier, if I wrote this down, it would be pages. I can literally show it to you on the screen, and I can take that slider right down there and watch. It shrinks down to the prep, you see? So that's what that element of the bottoms does, okay?
Yeah.
This next margin, okay, from the margin is set at 1 millimeter. If I say, look, I want that to go right up there, that is going to be such a tight fit. That means on that base part of the chimney that you've got no room for maneuver.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you have got loads of undercut, you can give yourself some leeway. You can do this. You can say, well, you know what? I want there to be space right up to there, and so on. This is why I said Exocad, you personalize it to yourself.
So is that gap you're doing in the main part of the prep, Gulshan, how you would deal with that slight undercut?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
There's another way you can deal with it as well. Look, see here it says add another zone. You click on that, it gives you another zone. The color's going to be turquoise, and you can say, you know what? I want that to be that level of gap. You take your paintbrush, you go in here, and you color in where you want there to be more gap. Did you see what I did?
Yeah, yeah.
So I took the left button with my paintbrush, and I literally just paint where I want there to be a desired gap of 0.146.
Sure.
You see, and it will do that. It'll make it more baggy in that particular area.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're with me there, then I'm going to go to the next one, which is border.
Sure.
And again, you're going to see this graphically. And this is all about this angled area down here, okay? I'm going to just ramp this up so you can see it. So the way I just ramped up those colors was here. I just moved this slider here, okay, to the top end. And watch. So the first thing is the horizontal, okay? If you want to reduce, and look, you've got a legend right here. So it literally tells you on a basic diagram what it does. this is what I do, because I do a shoulder margin on everything. This is what my margins are set to. Can you watch as they all change?
I'm watching, yeah.
They've all gone. I put them all to 0. The one it doesn't let you change beyond 0.1 is the horizontal. But if I do that, right, and now I put the crown back on, okay, if I hit OK, watch what it does.
Aye.
Right, what it's now done is now it's unlocked that margin which was locked, okay, and now it's set to your new parameters. And when you look at that, me personally, I want control of the emergence profile. Now, when you look down there, you can now personally adjust whether or not there are black triangles and so on and so on, okay, because we zeroed everything.
Sure.
If you lock those out to those default parameters, then I'm afraid it will always create something with some kind of let's say a step there.
Yeah.
Okay, because it won't let you change those. Okay, so hopefully that answers design bottoms. Your
Definitely.
next question was mesh. Okay, mesh is the digital terminology for this thing here. See this brown model?
Yeah.
That mesh is the mesh which is described as the scan, the jaw scan. There's
Gotcha.
another mesh there. That's this one. That's the antagonist. Okay, mesh is just another way of saying an STL file. So if I go to here, all the way back here, as we've been creating this restoration, if I open this in Explorer, have a look at this. You see this where it says 3D object?
Yeah.
Each 3D object is a mesh. So one is the antagonist, one is the actual production blank, the support, and so on and so on.
Gotcha.
Okay? So that's what a mesh is. A mesh is just a generic way of saying an STL file. Okay?
Thank you.
Right. Next question. Chairside DB.
You answered that earlier.
Database.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Next thing, scene file. The scene file is, if I came out of this now, if I wanted to come out of this, okay, and click on save. See that? Saving scene?
Yeah.
So the scene is everything that's on the screen right there and then. It's literally it's like your horizon. It's your crown, your antagonist, and your jaw scan in one scene on there. So if you say load scene file, it will bring it back to that.
Gotcha.
Right? If you had not had that data on there and you save scene now, right, what it's doing is it's saying, oh, you've already saved a scene. Do you want to save it and overwrite the previous one, or do you want to save it and keep both versions? You see that?
Sure.
Right, so you can do either or. We can say, well, no, just overwrite it with this one.
Yeah.
Okay, you can see it saving scene. Project file, well, the project file is again right here. If we open it in Explorer, dental project, see that?
Yep, got it.
That is something that's specific to Exocad. It's basically if you're transferring a file to somewhere else that's got Exocad, they're going to want certain file types. You really don't need to bog yourself down with that.
Okay.
Scene objects. Well, scene objects are, let me go into it. Each scene object, so there you've got the crown. Here you've got the antagonist. Here you've got the scan data. Each one of them is a scene object which together make up the scene file.
Yes.
Okay. Likewise, mesh objects are individual STL files or STL items. So this crown is going to be an STL item. It's something you can produce.
Sure.
Right? If you change these, can you see how there's no base to the upper or lower scan data? They're hollow, so you couldn't print them as models, right?
No.
You'd have to use some software to close that, and then it becomes a scene object or mesh object.
Mesh object.
Right now, it's just a mesh file. Okay.
Okay.
Going down, well, I think I just told you the difference between scene file
done
and
that.
scene data. The warning at the top of the page, lots of warnings come and go.
Yeah.
To be honest, mostly I ignore them. What is magnetic line drawing? We talked about
We've
that.
done
I
that,
don't like
yeah.
it. Some people do. Lingual band, let me tell you
So
about
this is for
lingual band.
text, isn't it?
Yeah, well, lingual band is when you're doing a bonded crown. Okay?
Yeah.
And you remember, I'm sure you've seen bonded crowns where the lab technician has left a silver collar on the lingual aspect or palatal aspect, where for whatever reason they don't want to put any porcelain, and that's often, people don't like to hear this, it's often the laziness of dentists who they think, oh, that's just the palatal, I'm just going to put a chamfer there.
Yeah.
You know, they've left no space for butt porcelain,
Yeah.
and therefore you get a metal collar. So really doesn't concern you, but that's what it is. Can I replace a tooth bow with a tooth arch? That is again when you're doing multiple restorations next to each other and they're all linked together. It's really, you're not there yet, John. Okay, that's when you're designing several restorations together. Let's say 2112, and you're doing, an aesthetic kind of smile design type of case, and you want to move them all proportionate to each other to create symmetry. That's what that's about. So it's actually very difficult for me to show you on this.
Toothbow then describes the curved alignment of a series of restorations.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right, yes.
Okay.
A reduced restoration is, what happens is, let's say you are going to do let's take a full ceramic example, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you're going to do an Emax crown, okay? But rather than it being monolithic, you're a technician now, okay?
Yeah.
Rather than it being monolithic, you want the whole buccal face of it to be hand-built porcelain, okay? So reduced crown is where you can tell the software, reduce this element of the 3D shape of my restoration by X percentage or X shape to give me, 0.3, 0.4 millimeter to add some hand-built porcelain. It's for when you're doing cutback and staining and glazing.
Yeah.
So that's what a reduced restoration is. The bold warning on the bottom of the page. Right, I don't know where that warning is, but I think I know what you mean. And what it is that basically Exocad will give you warnings to say this is a medical device, and the fact that basically you have to retain the data, quite frankly. It means that basically if you, because you become a lab now in designing and manufacturing this, you can't just ditch the data. You have to be able to show, I did this and I did that, and actually medico-legally it supports you, because you can say, well, here's exactly what the prep looks like underneath. And it's completely reproducible. So that's what that is. Visualize blockout thickness. Okay, visualize blockout thickness. I think that visualize blockout thickness would have been somewhere here to do with, it's to do with undercuts. It's in here. So I didn't go into that tab. We went into gap, we went into border, undercuts. Well, here, this is where you put in the narrowest drill that's in your collection in the milling machine. The narrower that is, the more precise the milling will be, okay? If you go messing with that, honestly, you're going to get things that bind as they go down. Leave it as it is at 1.4, and it'll just be fine. What else? Yeah, where you change the angle of the undercut, which it appreciates or doesn't appreciate, the size of the undercut, again, you're getting into trouble areas. This is where I would rather you use the painted colors to graphically see what you're doing rather than use numbers, percentages, and degrees. That's really for technicians or when you're really into it, So I'm going to suggest that you leave this one alone. Where are we then? Next page.
Just the last
location. One. Move the blanks. I showed you that.
Yes,
that was to do with, when I said that Shivani had that problem the other day, where she tried to put the sprue where she couldn't because there wasn't porcelain there.
Yeah.
Well, that's where you use that blue arrow and you move the thing around such that you see the sprue arriving in an appropriate area.
Absolutely.
The problem with sprueing comes when you come to inlays, where it's a completely internalized restoration, where because of the way it mills it as a 4-axis machine, almost always the sprue is going to be on the fit surface. And to be honest, that's why I do not do inlays. I do onlays and crowns. I do not like doing inlays because the fit is more difficult. You have very little leeway, and generally the kind of teeth I'm restoring are going to be completely broken down.
Yeah.
You saw some of my real life cases.
Sure.
To be honest, if someone can benefit from an inlay, then the chances are you can just do a composite restoration anyway. My fees are a little bit too high for someone to want a porcelain inlay where they could have a composite for less than half the price. I've just gone through all of the list of everything on there.